Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Devy Workshop. I'm your host, Jordan, and we are joined by a very special guest on this episode. But before we get into that, obviously, do the working of putting them, subscribing, drop the like, and don't forget to hit those video alerts because there's going to be some great content coming out. We've just got started with this channel, so all the help is appreciated. So, like I mentioned, we've got a special guest here. It's Tony Walesby from the staff writer and ranker at DFF Dynasty, so make sure you drop that a follow, and you can also follow Tony on Twitter on Dynasty Patrol HQ. We'll drop all the places you can follow his work, and make sure you drop him a follow. He's a really good guy, Devy Dynasty specialist. So that's why we've got him on here to talk some Devy players. So for the first few episodes on the channel, we're going to go and jump through the conferences, and we're going to start with the SEC. So yeah, Tony, thank you for coming on to jump on and talk about some SEC Devy players.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. If we're gonna kick it off, it makes sense to start in the SEC, the mecca of college football.
Yeah, 100%. Like I, as a Pac-12 guy, because obviously we mentioned off air that I'm a Seattle fan. I do favour the Pac-12, but I cannot deny that the good stuff is in the SEC. So yeah, we'll jump and get started in there.
Yeah, I'm a University of Michigan alum, so I'm a huge Big Ten guy, but the SEC still, is easily tops.
Yeah, definitely one. We can't deny that. So, like I mentioned, obviously I've got an hour to discuss the SEC players. We're not going to try. We're not going to get all of them in. We're going to try our best to get as many as the big guys in. There's so many. If you follow college football, you know how many players there are in these conferences. It's hard to keep track of them all at times as well. But we're going to talk about the big players. We're going to talk about some of the guys, the freshmen coming on the scene. So Tony, let's get into the quarterbacks. And first of all, what's your opinions on the quarterback situation in the SEC? Because obviously we're used to these big hitters, and there's still some good prospects in there, and there's some good players. But it seems a bit. I don't know if we're just waiting for these big guys to come through because of obviously Bryce Young and everyone. Will Levis, if you want to count him in there, have gone on. We're just waiting for that next big person. How do you feel about the quarterback situation? Devy wise.
I feel pretty good actually. To your point, I feel like it's a lot of like raw guys that haven't really shown what they can do yet. My top three right now, SEC quarterbacks, I got Spencer Rattler from South Carolina. I like Rattler a lot. If he can get his head on straight, I think he'll be one of the top quarterbacks. It's always been a mental thing with that kid. Going back to QB1 in high school, I got Jaden Daniels from LSU, who's got a lot of hype right now, and Jalen Milroe, who I think is going to win the starting job in Bama. So my top three quarterbacks in the SEC, and then two sleeper guys I really like are Joe Milton from Tennessee and Connor Weigman from Texas A&M. I think those are both high-flying offenses. Milton's not a younger quarterback, but veteran Milton coming in, starting again, and Connor Weigman, young sophomore, finally getting a chance to kind of have the keys to the kingdom. I think they're going to run a high-powered offense over there and do well for both quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think you're right in what you're saying. I think we're just waiting for. At the end of the season, we could look back at two or three of these guys could really put a step forward and be really high up in Devy circles. At the moment they're just like simmering. Like waiting to jump out. There's like some really good cannons there. We'll kick off with Alabama. I know Georgia are the reigning champions, but we'll start with Alabama, seeing as though you mentioned Jalen Milroe. Obviously, there's a few guys there. Ty Simpson, I think it's maybe a bit too early for him. Do you think Jalen Milroe is going to be the start of this year? It was a strange one bringing Tyler Buchner in. What do you make of that? Because I think a few people have talked about that. Is that just getting those numbers in that room, or is that to try and kick up the backside for something of a better word? Jalen Milroe.
Motivation tactic to Milroe. I think Milroe will start every game for Bama this year. I don't think he's Bryce Young. I think he's, more of like a standard Alabama quarterback, like a A.J. McCarron type. But I think he'll be solid. I think Ty Simpson is a superior quarterback, but like you said, not quite ready yet. So I think we'll see Jalen Milroe operating that high-powered Bama offense all year this year in 23.
It's one that I've got, like I said, like I mentioned, like quarterbacks are simmering in there at the SEC at the moment, waiting to jump out and make everything. I've got Jalen Milroe quite low down my rankings, not because I don't think he's a bad player. I just think that there's a lot of things he needs to work on. The ground game is absolutely fine at that. We know what he can do on the ground. Is it his decision making and his passing that he really needs to work on to really kickstart him this year and really push him up the Devy rankings?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, so one of the reasons I like him is because he's Alabama's starting quarterback. If Jalen Milroe was a starting quarterback for Florida, I wouldn't know his name. I mean, I would, but I wouldn't be talking about him. I wouldn't like him. I like him because he's in that system. You know what I mean? It's not going to be hard for him to hand it out to McClellan or throw it outside of Ja'Cory Brooks. You know, Bama is always a perennial powerhouse, and I think he can operate within the confines of that system. Low end, we're looking at like AJ McCarron. High end, we're looking at like a Jalen Hurts to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be taking the high end of Jalen Hurts. They'd like that very much because a lot of people, when he went into the NFL, still wasn't high on Jalen Hurts, and it just shows you that just because they don't maybe hit their peak in college doesn't mean they're not going to hit their peak. It's looking at the upside.
I think Hurts did hit that peak in college at Oklahoma. The problem is that quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts and Russell Wilson and Bryce Young usually coming out are hard to evaluate because the NFL likes their big-bodied, big-arm quarterbacks. So when you get this guy that's 5'10" that can throw it all over the field and run it all over the field as kind of an improviser, the NFL doesn't really know what to do with that. So that's why Hurts fell so far, and that's why there were so many questions about him, and he's proven them wrong.
Yeah, that's fair. And so moving on to Georgia, the other powerhouse in the SEC, the reigning champions at the moment. Obviously, again, it's a bit similar to Alabama, where it looks like there's going to be Carson Beck is going to be that guy. Are you in the agreement of that? And do you think Carson Beck can? What do you think his style's like? Because I don't see a massive upside in fantasy. I think he could be a solid quarterback at the next level. Again, we'll see him for the first time properly this year and stuff, and he might surprise a few. But I just feel like he hasn't got a massive ceiling, but he still could be a solid quarterback at the end of this year if he decides to come out this year.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Carson Beck is a Stetson Bennett clone. You know what I mean? He can have success in that killer system, but when it translates over to the NFL, But here's the thing. Unlike Bama, I actually don't think Carson Beck will keep this job because I'm a big fan of Brock Vandagriff. That guy was a 5-star last year, redshirted. I think he will overtake Beck by midseason.
He's a weird quarterback room because he's it's probably about 50-50. Like, obviously, you're in the Brock Vandagriff. I was massive on Brock Vandagriff last year. You know, obviously, I knew he wasn't going to start last year, but I thought it would be his job this year. But obviously, the talk, they never let anything slip. You know, you never know until you get to when it comes to like fall and stuff, where you kind of get an inkling. But I still think it's up in the air, and you're right. Brock Vandagriff could take that job from Carson Beck, you know, at some point if it doesn't go well. What do you think about Brock Vandagriff? Obviously, you mentioned you like him. Do you feel there's more upside to him in Devy circles?
Oh, 1,000%. I think Brock Vandagriff can be a top 3 guy pick coming out. You know, and obviously, like I said, Carson Beck's stealing Stetson Bennett. I mean, he's just a guy. But Vandagriff, like Connor Weigman at A&M, I think they're 5-star guys, and I think they have all the tools to really be a top pick in the NFL and succeed at the next level if given the right opportunity.
You also mentioned in your top 3 guys, Spencer Rattler one. So we'll move on to Spencer Rattler. We'll throw a few of these more experienced guys, I suppose, that have obviously got quite a bit to prove. You know, some of them have come off good seasons last year that we'll mention in a minute. But Spencer Rattler is, when I first started playing Devy quite a few years ago, Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma was that guy. He's going to be that next guy in the NFL. You know, he's going to be a Heisman. And you mentioned like his head obviously is the big question. What's going on upstairs? Not play wise, just like off field problems. You know, like and just mental. You know, if he gets that fixed, could he get back to where he was talked about? You know, going into the NFL, or is he going to be a certain level of criteria for the NFL?
I think he can build himself back up, and you know, I think if you watch that QB1 show on Netflix, you know, where they highlighted him in high school, the dude was just, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here, but the dude was just a complete prick. I mean, literally, he's on there chastising his teammates and stuff. Like, it was just bad. It was terrible to watch. Like, come on, man. And then he gets at Oklahoma, and I think absolutely he still had that same kind of persona and personality about himself, and I think it impacted him on the field. Because Oklahoma, you know, they're a top freaking football program. They're not going to put up with that crap. They'll put up with it if your play is on the field good, but it wasn't. They were begging for him to be benched for Caleb Williams like 3 games into the season. I mean, you know, because that's how bad he was. But he rehabbed himself, transferred over to South Carolina, And to me, what showed that he matured a little bit is that he came back to college for his senior year. He could have gone into the NFL and, been a fifth, sixth round pick, kind of maybe gotten his shot because of his talent. But he said, no, I need another year to mature here in college, bump up my draft stock. That showed a maturity level that I didn't think Spencer Rattler had. So that kind of bumped him up for me a bit.
I think you don't hear much coming out of South Carolina about him, which is always a good thing, when it comes to things like that. But there's no denying the talent there. The arm talent and the throwing, playmaking. He's got that, and it's like you said. If he can put all the off field and the mental things together, there's no reason why he can't. Obviously, moving on and stuff like he's moved on for 2 years now from when he should have come out. But I don't know how you feel about the age thing when someone's coming out. I'm guessing it depends on the player. Like people like Kenny Pickett still went in the first round. Hendon Hooker, obviously talent wise, but does it matter that he's an older guy? Does that affect his stock if he can do the?
For me, it depends on the position. Quarterback, it doesn't matter. I mean, quarterbacks, they play till they're 38, 39, 40 years old. So for me, it doesn't matter if a guy's 25 coming out as a quarterback. It matters if it's a running back because, shit, a running back comes out at 25, he's got, 5 years left before he's done? So for running backs, it matters. And wide receivers, it matters a bit too. But quarterbacks, I don't think so. They play so long anyway.
Another guy you mentioned that you threw in there because it's funny that you mentioned this guy because obviously I mentioned I was a Pac-12 guy and I saw this guy for Arizona State, Jane Daniels, and I was always left underwhelmed with him. I always thought there could be more. Obviously, there's the size issues which always come up in the NFL, as you know, with the people that have happened recently. But I was always left underwhelmed, thinking that there's more under the bonnet to say, but he never really did that. He had a decent arm. His playmaking on the field, with his legs is up there with the best in college. To be honest with you, we saw that last year. Do you think he's really taken a step by moving to LSU from Arizona State?
I do. Jaden Daniels reminds me of a quarterback from Michigan years back. I don't know if you know him. It's Denard Robinson, shoelace. Very athletic, could run all over the place. We looked amazing against cream puff teams, and then as soon as we played teams with real defenses that could close off the edge and make him beat him with his arm, he sucked. But I think the reason, and I think that's basically Jaden Daniels. The reason I think he's going to succeed, however, is because they have Malik Neighbors, my favorite wide receiver in the SEC. I think Malik Neighbors will make Jaden Daniels' arm look a lot better than it is, a la Chad Pennington, Randy Moss, and Marshall.
Oh, we'll get onto Malik Neighbors in a bit, which he's really impressed me last season. He came, obviously we obviously knew his name, but yeah, we'll get onto him in a bit. Just on Jaden Daniels, do you think that obviously Devy wise, kind of see him picked up in? Obviously, if you have a startup and it's around 4, 5, you don't really see him get picked up. Do you think he's not going to be on many teams and you're just going to get him in them rookie depleted drafts next year, or do you think people are picking him up in later and taking a chance on him?
I mean, I've done a few Devy drafts, initial startup and depleted Devy drafts this year, and people are going after him in the late rounds. If you got a 10-round Devy draft, he's got snag. If you got a 5-round one, you're going to see him in the 4th or 5th normally. I mean, that's super flex. If it's one quarterback, probably not.
Yeah, yeah. It's someone that I was taking a chance on a few years ago, and he's, how can I put this without, he's definitely needs a lot more work. It's KJ Jefferson I wanted to talk about as well. Another guy can make plays with his legs, big, powerful guy. He's just run straight forward sometimes, and maybe not the best thing as a quarterback, charging through people, but definitely a guy whose mechanics as a passer really needs to work on. I'm not sure if he can get there. Are you? You didn't mention him in your top quarterbacks. I'm guessing you're quite down on him and stuff. It's like obviously I was someone I was high on, but I've kind of pushed him down my rankings a bit. How do you feel about KJ Jefferson going into this year?
Yeah, I'm not a big KJ Jefferson guy, mainly because of the offense they're going to run. I think Rocket Sanders is arguably the best running back in the NCAA right now, so it's going to be hand the ball to Rocket, hand the ball to Rocket, hand the ball to Rocket, make a 3rd and 2 throw. That's going to be it. He's not going to be asked to do much, so he won't do much. That's where I'm at with KJ Jefferson.
So before we came on air a couple of hours ago, we was talking in the chat, and we had a little bit of a laugh with this guy. And I said I knew his name quite well, but I'm going to set myself up to fail, didn't I? And it's probably the biggest freshman in SEC. Obviously, there's some good freshmen coming out of this quarterbacks in 2023. he's probably a guy that's up there with Dante Moore, potentially getting some starting this year. Depends. I know you mentioned Joe Milton you like, so I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. But obviously, Nicholas Iamaleava, did I butcher it? Did I butcher it?
Nico Iamaleava.
not far off, but yeah, obviously a 5-star recruit on 274 Sports.
I actually like Nico better than Arch Manning.
Wow. To be fair, like if I going a bit off subject, off topic and stuff, obviously the top 4 QBs from this year. I actually got Dante Moore first, and people might say it's Pac-12 biased, but I do really like him. Arch Manning's number 3 behind Iamaleava, and I've got Malachi Nelson. But to be fair, you're splitting hairs with them. I think they're all very good quarterbacks, and they're in. How do you feel about them?
The ranks as Nico 1, Arch 2, Nelson 3, and then your guy Dante Moore 4. But yeah, I mean, you can you can split those, whatever. They're all top guys.
Yeah, it's an exciting quarterback class. But obviously, you said you was a massive Joe Milton guy. I do like Joe Milton. I think I'm not saying he's the same player as Hendon Hooker, but I feel like the problems that he has are similar to Hendon Hooker, but the positives that you have are similar. You know what he can do. Do you think that this is going to be Joe Milton's job all year, and do you think people are going to be looking at him in the NFL, or do you think he's just going to keep that seat warm for him, and he might late in the NFL?
I think it'll be Milton's job all year, just because Nico's really raw. I love Nico Iamaleava's tape, like his highlight reel. I mean, the dude looks like Pat Mahomes, and I don't compare anybody to Pat Mahomes, but he's really raw, I think. And Milton, as a senior, I believe he's got the strongest arm in college football. I saw a video years ago where he was standing in the middle of the big house, Michigan Stadium, and he threw a football outside the stadium. When he first got into Tennessee, they were asking this wide receiver about Joe Milton's arm strength, and he said that he caught a ball thrown by Milton, and it left a huge cut on his hand. That's how freaking powerful this arm is. But more importantly with Joe Milton is he finally put it all together last year. When he took over, when Hooker got hurt, I think he threw something like 11 touchdowns and no interceptions, and they routed Clemson. I mean, but the no interceptions is just not something Milton's accustomed to. So that, to me, that showed a lot of growth with him. And I think he's really going to be able to operate really well in the confines of that Josh Heupel one read and go system. You know what I mean? He'll look to see a squirrel wide open running down the field. If he's not, he's going to take off. That's it.
Yeah, you saw that in that Clemson game, didn't you? Where it was that one read, get it out to score right, let him do
their offense. That's the offense they run.
But yeah, you mentioned his arm. Like in that Clemson game, you saw. I think he hit White down the field. I can't remember how far it was, but it was over 50 yards straight down the middle and stuff. You see that power in his arm, and that's going to be massive. Saw that with Jalen Hyatt last year, what he could do with him, and that Squirrel White could be that guy as well. So
White is basically Jalen Hyatt to me. That's the same
guy. Yeah, so we'll get onto him as well. He's another exciting guy. But just touching on a couple of more quarterbacks before we move on to the running backs. Obviously, you mentioned Connor Weigman from Texas A&M. It looks like it's going to be his job, this year. And another guy who's, like you say, we mentioned the freshman coming in this year is still raw. Connor Weigman's still quite raw. He's still got a lot to do, but his upside is very high. I remember the freshman class from last year, the 2022, having Drew Allor and Connor Weigman 1 and 2, and they're still 1 and 2 for me, and they've kind of pulled away from the others as well. And I think Connor as well as Drew Allor can be really good quarterbacks. Texas A&M obviously had a weird season last year, so he's got Evan Stewart there, which again we'll talk about. So you mentioned Connor Weigman as an exciting guy. What does he bring to, like, obviously as a fantasy relevance, to people on your team?
Yeah, so I mean, 5-star coming out last year. I liked him right up there as well. And for me, Weigman saw the field a little bit last year because of injuries, and I mean, he had some pretty big games. He had games where he threw over 300 yards, multiple touchdowns. I mean, he showed that he can play at the college level. You give him the keys to that high-powered system with, like you said, Evan Stewart, Le'Veon Moss, and I think he's gonna blow up onto the scene and end up getting drafted first round NFL and really being a legit starter in the league.
It's strange because, like, obviously you mentioned you've probably done some Devy drafts there this season. He's kind of dropping down the board as well, which is strange to me because I still think he's like obviously 1 year into college. Obviously, I had a couple of stats, couple of like garbage time games, but he's shown positives there. So it's strange to me how far he's dropping down, the board. Did you find that strange? If you've been doing Devy drafts, have you found the same?
Yeah, so it's not strange to me only because it's kind of that shiny toy syndrome. You know what I mean? We like the rookies, we like the shiny new toy, we like the brand new names, and we forget about the guys that were the shiny new toys last year. That's why guys like Brock Vandegrift and Connor Weigman get forgotten about, and those are your values that you're looking for in your Devy drafts.
And just the last guy, another guy who was not a shiny new toy last year, but he was a very Devy draft darling, and it was Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. Obviously, probably didn't hit the heights of what people wanted to last year. Still only not been long in college. Obviously moved over from USC last year into the Ole Miss offense. But is it concerning that they've brought Spencer Sanders and Walker Howard over? And do you think that he's going to have a real fight to win this job? And if he does, that's going to be good for if you own Jackson Dart in Devy circles.
Yeah, I'm gonna be straight frank here, and if I was writing an article right now, my editor would be yelling at me because for our SOE they call it. I'm not allowed to say guys suck. I just have to say that they're kind of bad, but they have these good qualities. Jackson Dart sucks. He does. He's just not who we want him to be. He's shown that throughout his collegiate career. He just isn't good. It is what it is.
So do you think that even if he gets, obviously in your opinion, definitely if he gets the starting job, you're still not in on him and stuff, and they've brought these guys in because maybe
I'll be honest with you, I haven't been following him because I hate him. I think he's just a straight crumb bum. He's at Ole Miss, you said?
Yeah, he's at Ole Miss, and obviously Spencer Sanders and Walker Howard that they brought in this off season. So to me, like Liffin, is he thinking that the quarterback room isn't strong and they need to bring some of these experienced guys in?
Yeah, I think he could probably keep the job, but that job is going to be fucking giving 300 carries to Quishon Jenkins, which anybody could do that.
So you mentioned one of these running backs, and I've put them both together because it'd be interesting to see who your favorite is. But I have a favorite, but I wouldn't split hairs who you drafted. You've got Raheem Sanders, who went off last year, had 222 carries for 1,400 plus yards, 10 touchdowns, 28 receptions, 271 yards. And the freshman on the scene who came from, obviously, you knew about him if you followed, obviously, the freshman class, but you didn't probably think he was going to break onto the scene as much as he did with Zach Evans and everyone there at Ole Miss. That's Quinton Judkins. He had 274 carries for 1,500 yards roundabout, I think it was, and 16 touchdowns. So I'm guessing you're maybe a Raheem Sanders guy more, or do you like them both very, very much similar?
For Judkins, actually. There's
Wow.
about Rocket Sanders. I don't know. I like him. I don't love him. Quishon Jenkins, I love. And like Rocket Sanders is most people's running back one so far for the 2024 class. I prefer Braylon Allen and I prefer Travion Henderson. And you could call that my Big Ten bias if you want to, but I still have memories of JT running through my mind when I watched Braylon Allen play. The guy's a size, speed, athletic freak, and Rocket's okay. He doesn't have a lot of breakaway speed. His burst is whatever. He'll truck guys, but I don't think he's got that elite gear to him, and I think that's going to hold him back. And I think Quishon Jenkins is a full-on elite back.
Yeah, what Judkins did in his true freshman season was like we know Ole Miss like to run the ball a lot, but they had Zach Evans and they brought in the guy from Power 5. Was it Bentley? I think Alexis Bentley wanted. I think they brought in and you thought, oh, this is going to be a running back by committee, but Judkins just took all the work, and for a true freshman, that's got to be pretty impressive. If you've got him in Devy's, or if you're looking at drafting, I think a lot of people, if you had Devy startups last year, especially 4 or 5 round ones, probably didn't touch him, and I see him going a lot in the first 2 or 3 picks now in this year. That's how impressive he's been this year.
Agreed. Yeah, I actually traded Scary Terry for him straight up in one of my Devy leagues.
That's a very nice trade.
Thank you.
That's coming from me. Was maybe not in on Scary Terry as much as other people, but yeah, I think he's an okay wide receiver. But if you can get Judkins for him, I'll be pretty happy with that.
I liked it. I kind of built that team to be a Devy based, so I like it.
So obviously, we mentioned the quarterbacks. There's a few new faces. Obviously, there's quite a few running backs that have headed off to the NFL. There's running backs there that we've seen a little bit of, but they're probably going to get more work. And obviously, that's the case of Bama with Jamara Gibbs going. There's a few guys there. There's even freshmen coming in. I know they try and hold the freshmen back. If they're not ready yet because they have so many guys at Bama. But I don't know how you feel. It feels like obviously Chase McClellan is the main guy, but I was a massive Jamari Miller fan. I don't know how Saban feels about him. We saw him a little bit last season, but do you think we're going to see it quite an even backfield early on, and then maybe someone pushes out in front and then takes more of the work?
I think it'll be about 80% McClellan. I've got the running backs for the SEC ranked as number 1 Judkins, number 2 Rocket, number 3 Kendall Milton over Georgia, and then my sleeper guys are Trevor Etienne and McClellan.
Yeah, I do like James McClellan. I think he did well in spells last year, and I don't think Roydell Williams is a guy to put any Devy stock into, to be honest with you. I do, like I mentioned, I do like Jamari Miller. I really liked him coming out of college. I thought he was the best freshman last year. Hopefully we see a little bit more of him this year. You mentioned Kendall Milton for Georgia. I don't know how this is going to go down with you, but I do like Kendall Milton, but I'm a massive Dejon Edwards guy. I think he's a little bit older and stuff, but he just seems to be able to do stuff in small spaces, and he's got that breakaway pace. Do you think, again, Georgia, we know they like to run the ball. They've got Branson Robinson, who was another Devy Darley from last year in the freshman class. Is this another one where we see a lot of the three getting quite a bit of work each, or is this Kendall Milton probably taking more? Because I think, again, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like it's quite close in talent, to be honest with you.
I think Milton will get about 60%, and then the rest will be the other guys. I think. Yeah, I think I like Branson Robinson a lot, so I think he'll get about 35%, and he'll be the guy next year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the Branson Robinson corner, and they're hoping to see a bit more of this year. He's a big, aggressive dude, but he can make people miss as well, and he's a real talent for sure. You mentioned Trevor Etienne, another guy who I don't think I've got him in any Devy leagues, but I've got him in a few C2C leagues and stuff, which is still pretty good. I wouldn't mind picking up a few shares. He did well last year, and they've got Montreal Johnson now. I've seen a few people on Twitter saying that don't forget about Montreal Johnson. He's still a good running back. Are you in that agreement? I do like Montreal Johnson, but I prefer Trevor Etienne to Rivoy. He's really electric. I think he's better. Like, again, I don't know how this will go down with the people listening, but I prefer him to his brother. I think he's going to be better than him. How do you feel about Trevor?
I think Montreal Johnson's okay. I think he's kind of he's a whatever back. Trevor Etienne, I think, is special. I like him better than Travis too. But here's the thing, though, it's hard to say that because Travis, what's killed him is the injuries. If Travis Etienne hadn't gotten hurt, he could. We might be talking about him like he's Jonathan Taylor right now. That's hard to say. So if Trevor can stay healthy, I think he'll be better than Travis for sure.
Yeah, and one last running back. I threw him in there. I'm not massively high on it. I just know a few people are don't mind him a little bit. That's Jacquez Hunter from Auburn and stuff. He's maybe a guy to watch out for. I don't know your feelings on him. Like you might be same as me. You might not have much feelings towards him anyway. I haven't picked him up anyway, but I just know a few people like him.
Yeah, I don't know anything about him. I kind of avoid Auburn players. They're kind of whatever now. Another guy I would throw out there is I like Le'Veon Moss from Texas A&M. I think he can do some things this year. If we're looking for guys that are a little under the radar.
Yeah, he was a guy obviously last year on from freshman class who obviously I think he got a few touches, not too many, but it looks like that obviously that with Devon A-Chain gone, it could be his backfield, to run, this year, and definitely a guy who, like I say, I think he was quite high on people's radars, but obviously like a later pick, so he could really shoot up his stock, with a good year this year, just as we've seen with the previous two. Obviously A-Chain, his stock rose quite well. People are still on him, even though he got a later pick in the draft than people thought. But the year before, what's his name now? The guy went to the Chargers the year before. He was high up, wasn't he, as well?
Spiller.
Yeah, Spiller, that's it. And obviously, he was another one who probably didn't get the stock that most people wanted. But Le'Veon Moss, yeah, I'm high on Le'Veon Moss as well. So I'm hoping for a good season from him. So moving on to the wide receivers, we might as well stick with Texas A&M because he's a guy that I really like. I know you mentioned your favorite wide receiver in SEC, but Evan Stewart for me was really good last year on a bad offense. Like he made some really clutch plays. Someone who's only like he's 6 foot, still 175 pounds only. Like a lot of people might be concerned with that, but he made some really clutch plays. Like getting off the floor is really unbelievable how high he can jump. And like I said, the quarterback position wasn't great last year of Texas A&M and just the overall play. So for him to still put up like 640 something, I think 645, something like that yards in his true freshman season, it really impressed me. Are you in the Stewart corner? Are you liking him?
I like Evan Stewart. He's probably about my wide receiver 3 or 4 in the overall SEC. I like him a lot. He's kind of the last man standing of those Texas A&M 5-stars, that's still on the team. What's his name? Chris Marshall or whatever transferred to Ole Miss and get kicked off the team. Yeah. Demon Demas beat up his girlfriend and got kicked off the team. Now he's in community college where Ty Frequent. I mean, Evan Stewart's kind of the last 5-star standing, and I like him. I also think I don't worry about weight with a college guy, especially when they're young, because that's kind of what you do. You know what I mean? You're growing into your body. You hit the weight room in college and you put on weight. I mean, that's pretty standard.
Yeah, the other guy that came out last year who was probably the number one guy, definitely the number one guy in the SEC. That's Luther Burden, another guy who had massive quarterback problems and was just like I don't know how the college picture is a bit different compared to what it was. It's not about. Some players still find it about getting onto a better team if you've had it underperforming, but obviously with NIL, it's a bit different now. I think Luther Burden's from that area as well. Were you surprised to see him stay there, or do you think he could? It's one of them things where third year, maybe find a bigger team, because I feel like he is a real talent, but he was really kind of held back a little bit down to that Missouri offense.
Yeah, he is. I love Luther Burden III. I mean, I might even like him a little bit more than Neighbors, if I'm being honest, now that we're talking about him. I recently traded for him in a Devy league. I'm a big Luther Burden guy. Entering the transfer portal would be helpful for him. You can get tied to a real quarterback. And their quarterback over there is something Garcia. I mean, he's a guy we don't know. I mean, but it's kind of a catch-22. He's the only game in town in Missouri. You know what I mean? They don't really have much of a running game. They don't have a quarterback. So, I mean, it's going to be the Luther Burden show. So it's kind of, it's kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen the other. You can stay where you're at and get, a million balls thrown your way and show everybody what you can do with no quarterback, or you can go to a team, with a top quarterback and a bunch of top talent where you're, the second or third guy in the pecking order. So I think I like Burden a lot, but I think I could see him staying at Mizzou.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, just doesn't hold you back too much. But you see some people going and maybe taking that step. So that's a year 3, maybe going to a bigger college, and maybe we'll see at the end of this year. But like you said, they got the guy from Miami, the quarterback, who another guy who people were high on. So hopefully, maybe they click there. And what I like about Burden, he's that do it all guy. He's a jet sweep. You can throw it to him in the backfield. He can do everything. And he's so fun to watch. And he reminds me of like the guy in college, like bigger and probably better in my opinion, but Xavier Worthy, where you give him the ball and you just make things happen, and it's like, how's he got yak after getting the ball when there's 5 people in front of his face, and somehow he managed to put up 10-yard game from nothing.
I think that's a fair comparison. It's kind of like the Ty Freak thing. Just get the ball in his hands and let him work.
So obviously, we mentioned them 2 guys. I know you're a massive fan of Malik Neighbors, and I am too, to be honest with you. He's. We mentioned obviously the quarterback Jaden Daniels, who obviously took a lot of the passes away from the wide receivers last year because of how much he runs. But Malik Neighbors still put over 1,000 yards, and from 73 reception, he was quite clear of the rest of the wide receivers in that room, and that's obviously Keishon Butte, another guy who was high from his true freshman year, and obviously he's had his problems and stuff, but he overpowered him with work. They really went and used Malik Neighbors, last year, and he's another guy. You look at him and you probably think he shouldn't be as fast as he is, but I remember he got a ball handed off to him, on the end around. I can't remember who it was against last year, and he just rocketed, and I'd love to know his speed, because he is a very fast guy, but he's dynamic and he can make catches as well. Obviously, I've taken a lot of the time talking about Malik Neighbors. I know how much you like him, so I'll let you hand over to you and talk about Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head. So helmet scout a little bit. I know a lot of guys don't like it, but to me, LSU and Ohio State are kind of wide receiver you know what I mean? You got Jamar Chase, Jay Jettis, Terrence Marshall hasn't really shown much yet, but LSU wide receivers tend to have sustained success in the NFL. Whatever they do, over there tends to translate over. So that's one of the reasons I like Neighbors extra. And yeah, like I said, Jaden Daniels ain't got the best arm, but I think Malik Neighbors is going to make him look like he's got a better one. And yeah, he's a size speed freak. He is a lot quicker than he should be.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Obviously, he's going to be the main guy there again this year, and looking forward to maybe seeing him step up even more from last year. The guy that transferred into LSU was Aaron Anderson. I don't know how you feel about when you're looking at wide receivers. Obviously scanning the video and stuff, but a guy obviously transferred from Alabama, couldn't really get into. Obviously, the Alabama wide receiver room's probably not the best it's been for a while, so maybe not to get any targets at all in the first season. Is that a worry going to LSU, or are you just thinking, like, what can you do at LSU? Is it something that we're used to now in college, where it's like, oh, people transfer now if they don't get a look, and it's not like it used to be?
Exactly. I mean, the transfer portal has changed with NIL deals and stuff. I mean, everybody goes everywhere every year, so I don't read too much into it. I mean, obviously, it meant he wasn't going to crack that wide receiver room in Bama, which makes sense. They got Ja'Cory Brooks, Burton, and Benson over there. He's not going to play over any of those guys, so he transfers out and goes to LSU, where he can play number 2 to Malik Neighbors.
You mentioned Ja'Cory Brooks there. Obviously, for Bama, he's another big guy. I always feel like he's got the potential to be really good. But and he is good. Like, I'm not taking anything away from what he do, but I always feel there's more there, and I feel like he can offer more. But I'm just waiting for him to burst out. I'm hoping it's this year, because the skills he's got, his arsenal he's got, he could be a really good NFL wide receiver. But I just feel a bit underwhelmed. And I'm hoping maybe he puts it all together this year, but with a new quarterback as well. What do you feel about Ja'Cory Brooks' stock, Devy wise?
I like Ja'Cory Brooks a lot. He's my favorite wide receiver at Bama, and you can't go wrong betting on a Bama wide receiver either. You know what I mean? So many of them are in the league, and yeah, I think being the guy with a new quarterback, learning the system, being able to grow with the new quarterback, I think Ja'Cory Brooks to the moon. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and obviously we mentioned Squirrel White earlier. He really burst onto the scene in the Clemson bowl game. I think he went over 100 yards. Another guy where he's just a yak guy. He can burn the top off as well. We mentioned similar to Jalen Hyatt. If a lot of people was quite high on Jalen Hyatt going into the NFL, so I think he's a little bit smaller, not a massive amount, like maybe an inch or so, but a lot lighter. He's got time to put maybe some weight on, but he can burn the top off. But the amount of times that Joe Milton put the ball in his hand, just across, quick read, one, bang, and he was making sometimes like only 5 yards, but he was making always positive gains, and we're going to see a lot more of that this year for him at Tennessee.
Yeah, I think he'll absolutely just slip right into that Jalen Hyatt role. That's why I'm a big fan of him, Devy-wise. He's not a guy that a lot of guys are targeting, and I think he'll slip right into that role. They'll keep that system going. And, yeah, I think he'll have huge success with Joe Milton dropping bombs on him all day.
Surprising that with obviously a catchy name like Squirrel White, that most people are on him and stuff. I thought more people would be on him. But, yeah, he's, like I say, in the Clemson game, really excited me. He's someone that I've got a couple of shares in, so I'm hoping he really steps up again. People at the moment seem to love these Tennessee wide receivers. There's a massive chance there for him to be the number one guy, as yards and productiveness, there, because I know Brew McCoy's there, was another guy who's 5-star. Obviously, he had his problems over at USC, but he comes to Tennessee and he's been steady. But I just feel like Squirrel White could be a really big mover in rankings for people from this year.
For sure.
So before we move on to the tight end, obviously we probably know who that is. There's obviously always a few freshmen coming into the SEC this year. Is he I've put a few names down here. I don't know how many we'll see this year. You've got Anthony Brown and Shamar Porter, who are two guys I really like for Kentucky. This year we'll see how they do. Tyler Williams, I saw him in the Georgia game. I don't know if you've seen any of these guys, the freshmen. If you've scouted any freshmen, some people start a bit later in this year.
Yes, I saw a lot of the freshmen coming out from my Devy guys, but I'm gonna be honest, the guys you've mentioned are not on my list.
Which guys are you looking at? Do you see any getting some
SEC rookie wide receivers? I didn't. Well, Malik Benson from Bama, is he a rookie? I can't remember.
He came from JUCO, didn't he? I think he's classed as, I don't know how old he is. I haven't looked how old he is, but it's his first year.
New to Bama, new to NCAA real football. Okay, so yeah, he would be he'd be on my list.
He's a guy where, like, from obviously over here in England, I don't know the full details of JUCO. I know kind of what it is, but he did dominate. I'm guessing if you're going to be special, you probably are going to dominate in JUCO. Is that correct? Because he did really just look.
Oh yeah, so JUCO is basically like, if you're not good enough to play for any Division I NCAA team, you go to, or if you have like character issues, you go to JUCO just to completely light up the scoreboard. And like JUCO, everybody else on the JUCO field is going to be a future DoorDash driver one day. So I mean, you're just out there playing. I mean, it's almost like Michael Jordan playing with kindergartners. Like you're just out there just having fun and showing off what you can do, for a team to look at you and be like, "Holy crap! Okay, this guy still got it. Let's bring him back." And that's what happened with Demon Demas. He was Texas A&M 5-star recruit, ends up beating on his girl a little bit, and doesn't get kicked off the team, but walks away from the team, and no school would touch him after that, and he went to JUCO. I don't remember, the Green Valley State or something. It's the same community college that Tyreek played at. Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, there's been a few guys that have gone on to be all right in the NFL. JUCO. Obviously, I'm guessing you look into this first year and see what you can do in college, with Bama and stuff, where you can start making assessments, I guess, on him. But he does look someone I think quite a few people are keeping an eye on him this year. Jalen Hale, another Alabama guy I like, but we'll see how much. There's some good Alabama receivers in front of him there, so we might not see much
from Bama, as always.
Yeah, we might not see much of him this year. He might be a guy that you look out for next year. And obviously, we have to touch on. A lot of people don't like talking about tight ends, but we've got to talk about tight ends in the SEC, definitely. There's a couple here from Georgia that we're going to talk about, and obviously,
let me stop you real quick. We don't have to talk about tight ends from the SEC. We have to talk about Brock Bowers from the SEC. That's it, man. It's Brock Bowers and then somebody else that caught for like 300 yards last season. Like that's what it is. Brock Bowers is a freaking man-child. He can block. He's a great pass catcher. Caught for almost 1,000 yards, 7 tutties last year. I mean, Brock Bowers is him. He's gonna be a top 15 pick in the league next year, and that's the guy to talk about. Every other tight end in the SEC, you don't want to talk about them because they suck.
Do you think, like you mentioned, he can block and stuff? Do you think at the next level he's going to be asked to be doing much of that? Is he just going to be a playmaker tight end? Do you think, or
Bowers, to me, because he can block, he'll be similar to like a Michael Mayer for this year, or Sam Laporta, a guy that is going to be primarily a pass catcher, but he can stay on the field and stay in there and block when he needs to, which will keep him on the field. As opposed to like a Dalton Kincaid at Buffalo, who basically is a slot wide receiver that they just want to pay as a tight end.
You mentioned Brock Bowers is the only guy to talk about. There is still a lot of love for Oscar Delp, who we haven't seen much of yet. Is he? I'm not saying he's Brock Bowers level, but obviously he's going to be the next guy. We might see a bit more of him with Darnell Washington just gone, but there is people talking about him. I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying he's up there with Brock Bowers, but
no, I mean Delp's time is after Bowers leaves. Obviously, right now, I mean, I think his ceiling is Darnell Washington, who was basically a blocker. I mean, nobody had really even heard of Darnell Washington until he blew up at the combine. I mean, until he had that combine performance, nobody really knew the guy's name. I didn't. And I know every guy. It's because he was a blocker. I don't care about blockers for fantasy football, and unless pancake blocks become a pancake stat for fantasy football, I don't care about blocking tight ends, which is what Darnell Washington is, and that's what Oscar Delp will be until Bowers leaves. But he's only got a year for that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are mentioning Brock Bowers like when you're doing Devy drafts and stuff, you can never be 100%. We've all been like I Spencer Rattler, and I thought, oh, I'm sitting pretty here with Spencer Rattler shares, and it can always just turn it from college. But Brock Bowers is up there within the top 4, I think, in Devy's at the moment. If you've got him in Devy, I'm on about like going into the NFL next year. If you're in just a normal dynasty, you're looking at these guys. Brock Bowers is in the 4 or 5, where it's like, I do think that these guys are going to be really good at the NFL. Are you in agreement with that?
Oh yeah, 1,000%. These guys are all top talents. I mean, Spencer Rattler, like we already said, is his head. If he can keep his head on straight, I think he can be the 3rd best quarterbacks in this class, only behind Caleb Williams and Drake May.
I'm sure a lot of people are holding Spencer Rattler shares. I'll be hoping that you're right there, because there've been a lot of people that are holding on, because there wasn't much you could really do with them, really, was there? Because when he went off the ball, he went to South Carolina. If you were going to trade Spencer Rattler, you probably wasn't going to get as much back as you wanted, so you were keeping hold of him in the hope that what you say, that he would come back and at least boost the shares up if you wanted to get off them, or if he ends up being a good quarterback in the NFL, you're looking good.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, that obviously comes lots of close to the SEC. Is there anyone else you want to shout out that we've missed off before we wrap it up?
Let me take a look here. All right, so a couple of guys. I think that a couple guys. I think the wide receivers from South Carolina are going to benefit from Spencer Rattler's resurgence this year. He ended last year really hot, and I think he's going to keep that going now his head's on straight. So I'm like an Antwain Wells and Xavier Legette, wide receivers from South Carolina that you can get for free right now, that I think are good buys based on the strength of how I think Spencer Rattler is going to play.
Yeah, a little bit off subject from the SEC. I was kind of upset that Jaheim Bell left for Florida State. I'm sure he might do all right there. They're looking good, Florida State as well. But yeah, he found him quite a bit, and he looked like a special talent and stuff. I don't know if Spencer Rattler made him look better than he was, but he looked like a kind of a gadget player. I never knew whether to put him in the tight end or wide receiver category. He was a strange evaluation, but yeah, it was a shame for him to go. But yes, South Carolina really surprised me last year, and obviously Spencer Rattler as well. So yeah, he's definitely a hope. And like I say, I've got a few shares. Hopefully we can see the best of him going on next year. Tony, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate coming on and talking SEC with us. We're going to drop all where they can find you. In the link below in the YouTube and in the podcast. They can follow you on Twitter at Dynasty Patrol HQ. See all your work at DFF Dynasty, on Twitter as well. Is there anything you want to shout out that you've got in the works at the moment, or where people can find you as well?
That's all good. So thanks for having me on, man. I really enjoyed it. I think we had a lot of good Devy discussion. There's not a lot of guys, Devy's kind of still a niche. There's not a lot of guys that, specialize in Devy. So it's nice to be able to talk to another Devy aficionado today. So I'm a staff writer and ranker for Dynasty Football Factory. Pretty soon I'm going to be launching with my co-host, Doc, I'm going to be launching a podcast for Dynasty Football Factory that's free to listen to. And it's going to be called the Always Be Scouting podcast. It's going to be completely Devy-centric, so you can look for that coming forward. And as always, I'm on Twitter at Dynasty Patrol HQ. You can follow me for free specialized advice whenever you want. Hit up my DMs, specific team advice, anything you want. Happy to help. And I'm also on YouTube, Dynasty Patrol HQ. Got a little channel there as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tony. Like I said, we'll drop all them in the links below, so you can make sure you follow Tony and all his work. He's just some great stuff out there. And like you said, there's not many Devy guys out there as well. So it's getting bigger and stuff. So it's great to see, and great that we can hopefully get you back on again, Tony. Again, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. I'll come on whenever you want me. Thank you.
Yeah, see you. Thank you very much. See you. Speak soon.
Yep, take care.